Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneur on Fire. And when I'm not interviewing inspiring entrepreneurs, I'm listening to Stephanie O'Brien on the Moved by Purpose podcast.
When I have to read part of the textbook or whatever book we're using, I read it out loud to myself because sometimes it can be dry information, but reading it helps me to remember that information. So I'm a firm believer myself.
Are you longing to know what your purpose is? Are you on the wrong career path? Do you feel like there must be more to life? Don't worry, there's hope. It's time to be moved by purpose. Now your host, Stephanie O'Brien.
Hey, it is good to be back with you today. This is your host of the Move by Purpose podcast, Stephanie O'Brien, and I am pumped today because this show is going to be different than any other show you have heard so far if you've been with me all along. And I am having a co-host today, CareerCache.com, Cache Prescott. She is someone I met back in the summer. It is summer. I met her actually in the winter. You're going to laugh when you find out what the topic is, and some of the comments I've said. You'll be able to know why I'm not able to get my thoughts out completely. But anyway, I connected with her in the winter. I interviewed her as an inspiring guest over at the Move by Purpose podcast, and really just developed my friendship with her over time and thought she is a fantastic person to have on as a co-host. This is a two-part episode where we talk about 8 ways to conquer chaos. Now, originally when we recorded this, I started off outlining 5 and expanded so much that we ended up with really 8 points. So I'm not covering all 8 today. This is just part 1 of how to conquer chaos. And without any further delay, let's get right into the conversation. And you'll hear why talking about chaos, and I even said when you're in sort of a chaotic moment or season, how you can be so overwhelmed you're not even providing coherent thoughts or sentences. So very timely episode for the both of us. I'm being real here with it being a chaotic season for me. So I'm human. Hopefully you can very much relate to me, and thank you for having some grace for some of my mistakes that I do. So without further delay, now let's get right into the conversation. Welcome to the Move by Purpose podcast today. This is your host, Stephanie O'Brien, and I'm excited. Today is a new format. This is a format I have never done before, and I'm very excited to have a co-host today with me. She was a guest on the Move by Purpose podcast back over, I think maybe even in the winter, and we developed a friendship, and I really resonated with her message, and I think she complements what I do very, very well. And she is Cache Prescott over at CareerCache.com. Welcome, Cache.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited.
I am pretty excited, too, to be doing this together. And we were talking before this formal or official recording of conquering chaos. And this is the time of year that it can just be so chaotic. Summer's ending. Fall is beginning. You know, if you have children, you're getting back off to school. And even if you don't have kids, but maybe you have a traditional job, it's like that end of year budgeting, fiscal year things. There just seems to be something about ending the summer and bringing in fall that seems to be a really chaotic time of year for people. And I am just really thrilled to be talking about how can you conquer this chaotic transitional season and what kind of things we can do to manage it. And I know, Cache, you were saying you could relate to the chaotic part. Is there anything,
Well, as we talked about before we got on the recording, I am a planner by nature, but right now it just seems as if I feel as if I hadn't planned a thing. And there's just so much going on. I'm one of those people. I have 3 kids. In August, school has started, and their schedules are my schedule, and it's just a lot going on. And matter of fact, next week I start teaching at the local university here, and planning for that and doing the business and having my kids' school schedule is just so much on my plate. And I also mentioned that I'm planning for a mastermind that I plan to start next month. So yeah, identity is just, I'm looking for it.
Yes, I can relate. And sometimes just I can relate where it's just so much on your plate, you just you can't even finish a sentence. You're just like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Just like that.
And so I know there's a listener right now that's probably laughing and being like, oh, I feel this. I know what this is like. So I came up with some steps that we can take to try to reel it in and get control and conquer this chaotic season that we're going through. And the first step I said was to write it down or get it out of your head. And the reason I say get it out of your head is, well, when it's floating around in your head, like, I don't know if you can relate to this, Cache, but for me, when there's so much on my plate, I mean, that can like consume my mental space and energy all the time. And it's like swarming around. And I mean, hence why I can't really, in a moment like this, I can't even have a coherent conversation.
I can totally relate. It eats at you. It just worries you. And it causes unnecessary anxiety when you just have it sitting there in your head. So like you said, just writing it down, something as simple as that, at least it's just out of your head for the moment.
Yes. Now, question for you. And you can feel free to ask me other questions
I was going to, so.
to challenge me. Now, and this will kind of transition us into the second step, but
okay.
Have you ever experienced, okay, you hear this, get it out of your head, you write it down. Does that relieve you, or does that sometimes overwhelm you even more when you actually see it and you're like, oh gosh, this is worse?
To be perfectly honest, sometimes it does give me relief. Sometimes I'm just like, okay, at least I have an idea of what's going on. And there are other times where the list seems like it never ends. And so, yeah, the overwhelm does kind of set in. So I must be honest, I've had both reactions.
Yes.
And how about you?
Oh gosh, definitely. And for me, I don't know what it is. I could have lists written down everywhere because I know the power of just getting it out of your head. And so just freeing up the mental space and writing it down just for me frees up mental space. So even if the problem is sometimes I'm so crazy that I forget where my lists are. Like, what did I do with that list? And so I'll rewrite it. And then somehow in like the midst of total just the worst of it, as I'm writing down and just really trying to be in peace and to manage it, I seem to find all the lists at once. And then I'm reminded of everything that I forgot or haven't gotten to or failed to do. And so that aspect, sometimes it can almost be nasty. So and I don't know if anybody else could be like, oh, you find all your other lists and you're like, wow, I still haven't done that and I still haven't done that. And oh my gosh, I didn't do this. And what the heck is wrong with me? But this goes into my step 2. This is how I've learned to manage it. And that is to, when you write the list down, prioritize it. And what I mean by prioritize it is, this is what my mom taught me to do, and bless her heart, it has stuck with me since childhood, and it's the best thing since sliced bread, in my opinion. And it's just, you write this list down, and then you look at it, and you go, okay, this one, even if it's like the 10th one down, you say, this one is priority, that's number 1. And then, okay, this is number 2, and then this is number 3. And so these are the 3 things I'm going to do today. And you just break it down and to manage throughout the week or put it on the calendar. And you just focus on, these are the 3 things that must be done. and the rest I can get to later. And then you put it on the calendar, or you sign a deadline to it. And that has significantly helped me, because when I'm looking at a list of 50 things to do, I paralyze. I get frozen, and I have to put the numbers down, and it helps a ton. I don't know. Do you have a system?
Well, actually, I do have one that I kind of adopted from John Lee Dumas. I don't know who the quote comes from, but he always says on his podcast, if it isn't a heck yes, it's a no. So what I've been trying to do as of late, because, I tend to say yes to a lot of things, and sometimes I don't know how to say no. So what I did actually this past weekend, as a matter of fact, because I need to take some things off my plate, I wrote down all the things, the projects that I have coming up, and prioritized it just in that way. It was either heck yes or no. And then I even went a step further with the heck yeses as to what is a definite heck yes, and I'm going to do it right now, or what's heck yes, but not right now. And that was so very helpful for me, because sometimes we're a little too nice and we say yes to things that we don't necessarily have the time for, or because we enjoy something in particular, we take it on even when we shouldn't do so. And it's taxing on your time. It's taxing on your mental status. It's just taxing on your body and a number of different things. So I had to really do an assessment this weekend for myself for the next upcoming months through the end of the year to really focus on the things that I needed to focus on.
I really like that. And yes, John does use that quote, and it's a very similar concept to the book that I love, and I need to re-listen to it again because I listen to audiobooks. Essentialism. Have you heard of that book?
I have heard of it, and that is actually on my list of audiobooks to listen to.
It's good. You can listen to it, and I think it's a short book, so whenever I commute, I always put it on, and it's fantastic. I would like to re-listen to it again and actually take notes. Obviously can't take notes in my car. Anyway, side note, but I have started using, there's an app called Dropbox, and so it collaborates with Dropbox. But it's a voice command thing, and I believe it gets saved automatically into your Dropbox. And so if you have an assistant, or maybe if you can get to it later, I don't know if it gets transcribed or if my assistant just is that good. She just transcribes it. But somehow it gets transcribed. And so I don't know if that's an automated thing or if I told my assistant to do it and she does it. But anyway, it's it goes into collaboration so you can be more efficient when you can't write things down, but you still want to capture a thought or a note. And it gets sent that way. Dragon Software is another one. There's a Dragon app.
Well, the Dragon Software app hasn't really worked that well for me on my phone. And I've been trying to use another recording app on my phone. I've been doing a lot of driving as of late. But then if I stop talking and it wants me to type in a name in order to save it, and I can't quite type in a name as I'm driving, so it has not worked out. So I'm going to check out this Dropbox.
Yes, there is a charge. I don't think it's free. I think it's $1.99.
Small price to pay.
Right, for the convenience of awesomeness. So anyway, so that goes hand in hand too with if you can't write it down, but the power of just getting it out of your head. Still, the audio learning, we multitask, which also can help with conquering the chaos. It's what do you do that you could be also doing something else? And I know there's a lot of stuff that says multitasking is bad, but I'm talking if training and learning is something you want to do more of and fit in, that's why I love audiobooks or podcasts, because it allows you to do the dishes or to go for a run or to be in your car and learning and developing yourself.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer in both. I always say that my car is my mobile university, as I am playing taxi to my 3 girls and their endeavors, or having to travel wherever it is I need to go. I have a podcast on. And I've learned so much just listening and doing my everyday thing, but just listening to other people's stories or tips and tricks or whatever the case is.
Yes. But one of the things, and that's why I got, the Dropbox is because I would get super pumped with an idea. And I'm like, that's brilliant.
Yep.
Duh. I was like, I don't want to add, because it was like, I don't want to add to the chaos of now having to say, I have to re-listen to this, to go visit again, to go take notes. I'm like, okay, let's find a solution. Let's use Dropbox or a voice to self, a voice memo. There's a Voxer walkie-talkie. I mean, just use some audio recording app to, again, get it out of your head, and you can listen to. Now, is reading a list you wrote much faster than listening to something? Yes, but also for me, because I spoke it out loud, I remember it and retain it a little bit more so.
True. So true.
Yeah. So it actually is a double whammy. So I say there's a benefit. Writing it down is powerful, but speaking something out loud, just for me, and I think there's a lot of scientific evidence to back this up, it does help with cognitive retention. So, or cognitive memory.
I do that with the classes that I teach. When I have to read part of the textbook or whatever book we're using, I read it out loud to myself because sometimes it can be dry information, but reading it helps me to remember that information. So I'm a firm believer myself.
Yes. Okay, so we talked about writing it down, prioritizing it, and I love that what the heck, yes, but not right now. I do like that addition, but it could be hard. Like,
it is.
Are there any tips? Like, how do you determine what's a heck yes? Like, you hear this and you're like, okay, but oh my goodness. Like, even with the concept of essentialism, like if it's like not a 90% yes, let it go. I was like, do you know how hard it is to let go of an 89%?
Well, I completely agree, because that's part of the issue. There are so many things that in some way, shape, or form, we do want to do them. But I've also found that I am also kind of convincing myself to do some things. And when you're having those conversations in your head, kind of justifying why you should go ahead and do it, there's something there already innately telling you that, this is probably not something you are really that interested in doing right now, or you really want to do right now. So that's what helped me kind of creating that list, because I found myself doing a lot of justifying for the sake of taking it on.
Yeah. And this isn't something that you will master right away.
Oh, no.
This is something that will take some time. And you know what? Sometimes chaos is a great teacher. It's like, you got to do something differently. Because for me, chaos is, I do the best I can to hold my peace in it. But there's also like, okay, I don't want to experience this again. So what can I do differently?
Exactly.
Like, what have I done that got me into this situation? And that's another thing. We could have added that to that question of, what have I done? Now, sometimes life happens, and I get that. Sometimes crisis hits, or there's a death in the family. I mean, gosh, my poor accountant, bless her heart, but her father passed away right before April 15th, and she's an accountant, and she's got deliverables, and you got to take care of your clients, but then that happened.
Exactly. Oh,
I know. Yeah. And it's like, okay, crisis, things like that, that does happen. But more times than not, a lot of the chaos that we do experience has kind of been upon by our own decisions. So that's when I say, what have I done? And how can I do it differently? And so we could have added that as a step to just really assess and evaluate or review what's going on here. What lesson can we learn here? Yeah. Instead of just continuing to blow through it, just get past it. I just want to get over this. I just want to get past this. Well, if you don't want that happening again, you might want to ask yourself, in the midst of the chaos, like, what did you do? If you can manage that, sometimes it's way too chaotic. You don't have time for it. But like, maybe the moment things start to settle a little bit, you want to review and really try to learn.
I think that is a truly powerful question, because of the fact that sometimes once we're away from the situation, we kind of forget how we got there. And then it's so easy for us to arrive back in that same place and space again. And they always say that, insanity is you doing the same thing over and over again and hoping for different results. But if you don't examine what it was that you did to get there in the first place, you could easily find yourself back in that same place and space. So I think that's a powerful question.
Yes. And, it's a powerful question that's not easily answered.
True.
It takes time to really, and sometimes, like, for me, I'm like, I don't even know what I did. And so then I'll request, that's when you enlist the feedback of those that know you really well and say, hey, I'm just, as you know, because you know me well, I'm in this world of chaos and I can't pinpoint. I'm trying to figure it out, what I'm doing, but I can't because your mind is just too whatever, or you might just have blind spots and you need that feedback. So if you feel like you can't even come up with anything, ask someone, ask a loved one, ask someone that knows you pretty well that can give you healthy feedback, not anything that's going to destroy you and make you feel worse, but a healthy, like, one of the things that I received was, well, I noticed that you have a tendency to procrastinate. So you're in this like last minute run around, scramble together. Everything is a fire we got to put out. And, that's really hard for your team. That's hard for like all of us. And I was like, oh, so I need to like plan and prepare a little bit more. Try to realize that things take a little bit more time than I think they will.
It's so funny that you say that because I had the same conversation with my husband this weekend and he had to give me I noticed that response as well. And it was funny. I mean, but he was right on the money. I said, yeah, you're right. But it had to be someone outside of myself to point out, just those things that got me exactly where I am right now with my chaos. So,
yep. So let's moving on. So we added a couple steps. So we talked about writing it down, prioritizing it, dove into like how you can, if it isn't a heck yes, it's a no that John Lee Dumas states, asking yourself, what can I do differently to avoid this? Enlisting the feedback of a loved one to give you that honest observations of what they notice. And then I don't even know what number we're on because I added more than 5. But
yes, I don't know either. But the next one is one that a lot of people have an issue with.
Delegation.
Yes, that dirty D word.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, much easier said than done as well.
Mm-hmm. So why do you think it's so challenging?
Well, I'm one of those people that have problems with it because there are things that I like done a certain way. And it's not that there aren't people out there that are capable of doing it, but I know how I like it, and taking the time to explain to someone else and allowing them to do it, sometimes it is hard for me. I'm getting much better than I used to be because I do see the merit in it, and I can't do everything. As much as I think I'm Superwoman, I just cannot. Time does not permit for that. So I'm getting better about it. But yes, it's hard for sure.
I hear ya. And I can relate. I'll say I'm a recovering control freak.
I second that for myself. So
yes. But also at the same time, I kind of can operate in both extremes. It's either I need to have all the control and be really difficult to let it go, or I can kind of be a princess and be like, I don't want to do any of this. You figure it all out.
I love that you know that about yourself, though.
I hate admitting that, but I noticed I'm like, okay, I went from one extreme of, I'm just going to do it all. You have to do it this way. And it was like, well, what's the point of having an assistant if I'm going to spend all this time telling him what to do and then redoing what they did because I didn't like it? Like, it's just like, okay, well, that's just stupid. Like, let people do it, their process, and then give people time to like do it in a different way than you. So I had to learn to let that go. But then I got like, as I got used to the delegation, I'm like, oh, this is nice. This is nice. Let's just take all hands off. And let's just not want to be bothered at all. Like, just, you read my mind, you figure it out. I don't need to tell you, just do it all. And, you know.
Definitely one extreme to another.
Oh, I know. I'm like, let's find the balance. So I do believe that I am living in the balance now. There are moments where I might teeter to one side or the next, but through some tough lessons, as much as I want to be a princess, I just, I can't. Like, I'm not. Like, so, yeah, I definitely learned effective ways to delegate. And that's another thing that I think people have a challenge with is like they're told to delegate. They understand that it's important. There's fears of letting go. What if they do it wrong? Or in my experience, it does initially take a bit of time to even delegate because you have to now be very, very clear on the people you're asking for help with, on what it is that you need, what it is that you want. Also, though, giving them the freedom to do it in their own way, but you do need to be clear enough about the outcome and result that you want. And that does take some time to train them. But then you have, you know, especially if it's an ongoing task or ongoing help, once they learn it and start doing it, then like that's off your plate. Like,
absolutely.
You can be free. I mean, there could be review, like let me review. For me, like the first thing I believe I delegated was laying out my newsletter. And it was like, okay, now this is what I want. Also giving them creative license or freedom to lay it out and structure it as they want, as long as like the message is out there, links work, the grammar is correct. Like, you know, we're good. But there is that supervision. What I did, as I said, I went from one extreme where it was like, what's the point of even getting help if they're not even going to be utilized? And then number two, it was like, okay, I need to at least offer some feedback or some sort of leadership to them because people can't read your minds.
Absolutely. And that's people don't understand. Delegation is a leadership skill. Since we talked about writing down and prioritizing your list, this is where you can start with the delegation. It's when you look at that list and you prioritize everything, then you need to write down the things that only you can possibly handle. Write your name next to those things. And then you can go back through that list and then write a name of the person that you plan to delegate to next to the things that they are able to do. And make sure you're not assigning tasks to people that don't have the skill set or know how to do that particular task because you're setting them up for failure. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong with delegation. They give them tasks that they're not suited to do. Mm-hmm. And when you set people up for failure, it's a negative experience for you because you don't get what you want, and a negative experience for them because you set them up for failure. I can't do everything. As much as I think I'm Superwoman, I just cannot. Time does not permit for that.
So there you go. That was part one of a two-part podcast on conquering chaos. As you heard that I added steps, I believe I ended up with 8 ways to end up conquering chaos, and you only heard half of those. You'll have to check back next week for the remainder of the steps on how to conquer the chaos. And you find value for this episode. If you, first of all, connected with Cachet, she is having a career clarity mastermind group, so make sure you reach out to her over at careercachet.com. That is in the show notes. Her name is spelled Cachet, and you can check that out in the show notes. And come on over to movedbypurpose.net. If you have not subscribed, I have a brand new exclusive to my subscribers only power-packed manifesto on how to punch fear in the face. This will teach you to Get out of your own way. Stop holding yourself back and finally conquer the fears that have really stolen your dreams, stolen your destiny. And enough. And this is a powerful manifesto that equips you with the tools and the strategies you need to get past those fears and thriving in your highest self and walking in your divine calling and purpose in life. And if you found this episode valuable, make sure that you subscribe, rate, and write a review. This helps us get found by more people. And if you found that this episode can help somebody else, make sure you share it. Let me know who you are. I love hearing the success stories or what people are up to or even questions. I am here to serve you and to help you. So don't be a stranger, and don't forget to let me know what you're going through, what's up, what are you working on. I just love to get to know who you are. So let me know. And I look forward to hearing you. And stay tuned for next week on the continuation of How to Conquer Chaos.